Wow, what lovely flowers! Thank you so much, I said while I jumped into my boyfriend Teddy's arms. He was the love of my life, and there was nothing anyone could do to tear us apart. You're welcome, Kaylee. Anything for you, my love muffin, he replied while he squeezed me tightly. I had never been this in love before. Well, I was only 17 years old, but I didn't believe that I could possibly love anyone else that much. I knew everything about him. His favorite color, food, place, thing, what he wore to sleep, what he ate for breakfast. I could go on and on. Despite the fact that he came from a poor family, he always found a way to surprise me with beautiful gifts. But before I continue, please don't forget to like my video and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out on any great stories. My parents hated Teddy. They had a lot of money and believed that I should be with someone in my social class. But why should loving a person depend on how much money they had? I believe that someone's personality mattered more. And Teddy had a perfect one, or at least it was perfect for me. But the first time I brought him home for dinner, they frowned the whole time and kept making disrespectful remarks. I was so embarrassed. Even though we were quite wealthy, I was never spoiled, and I was always taught to work hard for whatever I wanted. I worked 2 jobs, and I was paying to finish my bachelor's degree online. I chose to do it online because I didn't want to move far away from Teddy. Anyway, my 18th birthday was coming up, and I was super excited. I just planned to go out to dinner with Teddy. Nothing fancy, but on the day, my parents totally surprised me. When I woke up, the house was beautifully decorated with balloons and banners that said, "Happy birthday, Kaylee!" I found this a bit odd because my parents were never that extravagant. When I got to the dining room to have breakfast, my parents were sitting there. "Happy birthday, darling! We have a wonderful surprise for you," my mom said. "You're really going to love it," my dad added as he passed me a big blue envelope. Okay, I said while opening it. There was a bunch of documents, and I really wasn't in the mood to read. "What's all this about?" I asked. "They're legal documents. We've bought you an island," my dad said with so much excitement I thought he was going to pop. "An island? You guys refused to buy me a cell phone last year, and I'm supposed to believe this? Is this some kind of joke?" I laughed. "No, it isn't. We've also transferred $500,000 to your bank account. We've admired that you are so hardworking, even though you don't really need to be. We believe that we've taught you all you need to know about responsibility, so now we are ready to share our little, or not so little, fortune with you. Now that you're legally an adult, think of it as our investment in your future," my mom said. I looked through the documents carefully this time and realized they weren't lying. "Oh my gosh," I thought. "This little island is located somewhere in the Pacific. We've already bought tickets for you and Teddy, so you can go there for a while to enjoy yourselves. There's a little beachfront house where you can stay. As soon as you arrive, you'll be shown where to go." My mom smiled. "You bought tickets for me and Teddy? I thought you hated Teddy. I didn't even know you guys had so much money. This is so confusing," I said. "Don't think too much. Go pack your bags and ask Teddy to pack his too. You leave tomorrow evening," they replied. I ran to my room to call Teddy to give him the news. "An island? Are you serious? What are you going to do with an island?" he asked. "Well, I'm not sure. Maybe I could build a hotel or something. Maybe I could sell it and use the money for something else. I don't know. Anyway, my parents have bought us plane tickets. We leave tomorrow night," I said. "Wow, this is so exciting," he said. We used the day to prepare for our trip. We bought a few things we thought we would need and packed a small suitcase because we both hated carrying too much stuff around. The next day, I could hardly contain my excitement. I felt like I was dreaming. Not only did my parents give me the best gift I could have ever asked for, but I was going on my first trip with my dear boyfriend. We would get to share a room and a bed and spend almost all our time together for days. I had never felt so happy. The plane rides and layovers took forever. Then we reached a large island and had to take a ferry to the small island, which was mine. When we arrived, it was midday. A well-dressed man was waiting where the ferry docked. He took our bags and asked us to follow him. Your parents employed me and 2 other helpers to take care of you during your vacation here. I'm Benjamin, he said. We walked for about 5 minutes, then arrived at a huge beachfront house. I thought my parents said this place was little. Wow, I exclaimed. It's a wonderful house and it's all yours. You've got a pool, a bar, a jacuzzi, and pretty much everything else you can imagine. I wish I could stay here all the time. Ha 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 ha. Benjamin laughed. My parents' gift kept getting better and better. It was surreal. Our first few days on the island were more than perfect. Teddy and I woke up in each other's arms every day. Then we'd enjoy the breakfast that was prepared for us. After that, we'd head to the beach, swim, snorkel, and then have a picnic on the sand. When we got back to the beach house, a 3-course lunch was already prepared for us, and we just laze around for the rest of the day. It was all I needed. Then one day, we got tired of our routine. Why don't we go exploring a bit? I don't know what most of this island looks like anyway, I said to Teddy. Sure, we'll go hiking, he said. We got ready and began exploring. Being surrounded by so much green was refreshing. The plants and trees were so fresh and different from what I was used to in the city back home. We walked further towards the interior of the island and away from the sea. The temperature changed and the air became more humid. I sat down for a while to catch my breath. Here, have a snack, love, Teddy said while handing me a granola bar. Thanks, I replied. As I lifted my head to take the bar, I saw a figure run behind him. I think there's someone here, I gasped. I got up and walked in the direction where I had seen the figure. Oh my gosh, Teddy, look! There's a whole village here, I whispered while staring in awe. We were on top of a little hill looking down. Below, there were about 15 small huts and several men, women, and children. They were dressed differently from us and looked quite happy. Let's go back before anyone sees us. We don't really know what they're like, Teddy said. I agreed and we quickly walked back to the beach house. After a most exquisite dinner that night, Teddy and I sat on the balcony looking at the stars. How can I own an island if people already live there? My parents forgot to mention that part. I don't think it's right, I said. We eventually went to bed because we were tired from such an exhausting day. Just as I was falling into a deep sleep, I heard a crashing noise. Teddy, wake up! What was that? I jumped. What? He groaned. I had no time to explain because at the moment our bedroom door was flung open and 3 huge men barged in. They looked very much like the natives we had seen earlier. I was frozen. They quickly approached us, tied our arms and legs, and then lifted us into their arms. Help! Stop! We both screamed, but no one heard. Not even the servants who should have been downstairs sleeping. I couldn't understand how all the noise hadn't woken them up. They carried us out of the house and walked through the bushes until they reached the little village we had seen earlier that day. We were taken into one of the little huts and thrown on the floor. Why have you brought us here? What have we done wrong? I cried. Please, let us go, said Teddy while shaking. They replied, but we couldn't understand what they were saying. I continued asking them to let us go, and eventually we were gagged so we wouldn't make any noise. All I could do was cry. I was so scared. We were left there for 3 days. Occasionally, the gags were taken off, and we were force-fed water and fruits. Then, on the 3rd night, I heard someone speaking English in the distance. The voice came closer, and I realized it was Benjamin. He was talking on the phone. He looked inside, and we pretended to be asleep. What do you mean, just the boy? We have both of them. Yes, we arranged to kill him. Yes, Mr. Adams, we will ensure that your daughter isn't hurt and that she is rid of that boy forever. Yes, 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 he said, then went silent. My stomach turned. Was this all a setup so my parents could get rid of Teddy? How could they do this? Teddy looked like he was about to cry. We had to find a way to escape, and I knew we were both thinking it, but we had no idea how. When there were no more noises outside, I started thinking. The only thing in the room was a lamp, and the fire was growing dim. It became clear what I had to do. I had to find a way to get to it and burn the middle part of the ropes which tied my hands together. It took a lot of struggling, and Teddy kept looking at me like I was totally insane. But I got my hands loose without burning my skin too much. I ungagged and untied myself and Teddy. Let's go, I whispered. We got up and ran. When we got back to the house, it was in complete darkness. Quick, grab your cell phone and let's go live. Let our followers know everything and get them to contact the police at home. If we have a hard time getting through this, at least they'll know where to search for us, Teddy shouted. I grabbed my phone and did as he said, then we packed our bags and went outside to hide until the sun came out. After we went to the place where the ferry had docked when we first arrived on the island, there was nothing there. How exactly are we going to get to the island with the airport? I asked. Look over there, he said while pointing to a small fishing boat. There appeared to be a little engine attached. I'll use my phone to get the correct coordinates. Come on, let's go. I've never done this before, but we have no choice, he said. I fell more and more in love with him. Teddy, you're so amazing. When we get back home, I want to marry you, I said. He smiled at me as we sped away in the boat. We made it to the island safely and went straight to the airport. We were able to purchase tickets right away and would only have to wait until the afternoon to leave. It was a long wait, but I felt grateful that Teddy and I were together and that we were alive. When we got back home, there were thousands of people standing there and so many reporters trying to interview us. Apparently, our live stream went viral, and everyone was concerned about our safety. I grabbed Teddy's hand, and he let go quickly. I wondered why. Suddenly, a beautiful girl jumped out of nowhere, straight into his arms. Teddy, I missed you so much. I was so worried. He held on to her tightly and said, I'll never leave your side again. Then they kissed. I nearly fainted. I stormed out of the airport and took a cab home. Later, I found out that he had been engaged to that girl way before he had even met me. He was only using me for money. He never really loved me. And the worst part of it all was that he never even bothered to reach out to me or to apologize. I instantly regretted my decision, which led to my parents' arrest. They had seen right through him and just wanted me to be with a better person. I should have left him on the island, which was never mine, by the way. I felt betrayed by everyone. You know that perfect family everyone in town is jealous of, don't you? Of course you do. There is one in every neighborhood. Their house has these family pictures showing how beautiful, how well-balanced, how happy they are, smiling straight to the camera, dressed to the nines. Well, that's my family. My perfect, stunningly gorgeous, amazingly wealthy, reputation-obsessed family. My dad owns several companies worth billions of dollars each. He's been in the top 50 lists in Forbes for years and years. And my mom is a former beauty queen who has been assigned as a director of one of my father's massive companies. You might think that she just sits there and pretends to look busy while others do the real work. But you'd be wrong. She is brilliant and super strict as well, both with her employees and at home. But before we move on, like this video, hit that subscribe button and activate the notification bell. This will let you live 20 amazing years longer. Trust me, it works. Except for when it comes to my older brother, that is. Tobias was their miracle baby. Why? Apparently, mom and dad tried to get pregnant for years and nothing happened. After attempting in vitro insemination and other medical techniques, they completely gave up. The very next month, mom realized she was pregnant. She called it an absolute miracle, even if the doctors claim it's usual, due to the anxiety levels finally being lowered once the pressure is no longer there. So you better believe that Tobias was a spoiled brat. With him, my mom wasn't strict or demanding at all. Everything he did was great, no matter how much he messed up. He was a little brat, if you ask me. Whenever a teacher had something bad to say about Tobias, mom would huff and reply, I think you might be thinking about another kid, because my Tobias would never do anything like that. And if there was a witness to support the accusation, she would brush it off, adding, they have it in for my little boy. You know our family is wealthy. They're just jealous. Pay them no attention. I assure you Toby is perfectly innocent. Oh, and wasn't the school requesting funds for an extension of the library? I could write a check right now, you know. Yeah, she'd write a check every single time Tobias got himself in trouble, just to bail him out. It was that simple and that messed up. 3 years after their miracle baby was born, I arrived in their home, their only daughter. That was nice, sure, but I was a girl, and they really wanted another boy. Mom thought raising boys was easier. Girls were more emotional and demanding. Now, I'm not going to say my parents hated me or anything of the sort. They were sort of loving in their twisted way. I wasn't denied a thing. I could ask for anything I wanted, but never, ever have money. They thought I would waste it all in an instant, so if I ever wanted something, I had to talk to my mom, and she'd have a personal shopper get it for me. I didn't even have lunch money since the school I went to would request payment at the beginning of every month. I think I was allowed to carry some money, and I'm only talking about a few bucks. Maybe twice in my entire life? No credit cards, of course, though Tobias has 3. He was the miracle baby, you see. he deserved it, even if he was a little bitch. To say Tobias was spoiled would be an incredible understatement. No, Tobias was far more than that. He was entitled and cruel and believed everyone underneath his station was garbage. To him, even if I was his sister, I was lower than him. Worse still, my parents seemed to agree. You see, my mom was almost supernaturally beautiful. I told you how she used to be a beauty queen? Well, she won lots and lots of pageants, and all of her trophies were on display in one of our mansion's living rooms. She would have the maids clean and polish them daily. Come here, Vera. She would call me to her side while we stared proudly at the awards. See these? You could win a few as well. Not as many, though, because, well, it was then that she gave me this judgmental look and sigh heavily, as if I was a burden. Well, you know. But if you wore makeup every morning and went to the hairdresser every week, there would be a pretty young lady there. Don't you think I'm pretty, Mom? I asked once, feeling too hurt to remain quiet at that time. You have the potential to be pretty, honey, she replied dismissively. I'll sign you on for some makeup classes. That will do you so much good. I was heartbroken, believe me. And it wasn't the first nor last time she said something like that to me. What's more, they forced me to take the makeup class and practice every day. Dad would look at me when I walked down the stairs and sighed, shrugging. I guess that's the best you are going to look today? Well, it's better than before. Yeah, that's a big load of BS right there. But what could I do about it? I did try to explain how much it hurt me when they talked that way, but they turned the tables on me as they always did. We are your parents, honey. We are only doing what's best for you, Dad would reply, and sometimes even hug me. Hugs and kisses were super weird in my house. They came once every blue moon. And then there was Tobias. Good Lord, Tobias was a nightmare. In my parents' eyes, he could do no wrong. They never even believed he could be lying. So if Tobias said something, it was immediately considered the truth. I think this turned my brother into a complete psychopath. Or maybe he was just born that way and my parents unwittingly pushed him even further into madness. He would go around the mansion destroying random stuff just because. Then he would blame it on a maid, who was promptly fired, or on me, and I got scolded. I never knew what fresh hell Tobias had planned for all those who worked for my parents and for me. And heavens forbid I ask a friend to stay over. He would stalk her mercilessly until she freaked out and left or confronted him and was told to leave. I decided it was not worth the effort. So I just went to my friends' homes if I wanted to hang out with them. It's incredible how normal those other houses seemed, even if they were so much smaller than my family's massive mansions. Mom would still pretend she was a beauty queen sometimes. Oh boy, that was insane. She dressed up in one of her tight contest dresses, which she still fit in, which was, in fact, kind of admirable. Then she'd put on a crown and walk elegantly around the house, waving and smiling like a Barbie doll. I had to clap at her when she walked by, or she'd get terribly grumpy after her little game was over. And my dad? Oh, that man. He seemed to think I was not only ugly without proper makeup, but too dumb to handle finances at all. He had to approve every single purchase I made and refused to give me just the smallest allowance. I lived in luxury, yes, but my every purchase was analyzed, judged, and then delivered to me if deemed appropriate. I felt judged every step of the way, and it was eating away at my confidence. Though I lived in luxury, I would have rather spent my time in a tiny house without any incredible furniture and comforts, all to escape the chaos my family was. Because my mom and dad weren't just mean to me, they were mean to each other. Dad would tell Mom that once upon a time she was beautiful, but, well, let me tell you his exact words. Look at you now, Agatha. You are a washout. If you weren't smart and could help me with my company, I'd find a new model in a second. And my mom, with her usual snark, would immediately snap back. Oh, that's okay, dear, because when you get too old to even go to work, I'll find myself a nice little toy boy and keep half of everything you own. Then they would laugh bitterly as if it was some sort of joke, when we all knew they were deadly serious. At 17, I simply couldn't take it any longer. Yes, I knew in a year I'd be free, but I couldn't wait that long. So I did something incredibly foolish. I never had any money on me, as I explained, but knew where the family's emergency fund was kept at our mansion. So one night while my parents and insane brother slept, I slipped into the safe. Oh yes, it wasn't just a tiny one. It was a big walk-in safe, big enough to be a room. I snuck it all inside a traveling bag. Well, not all, just the bills, because there were also jewels, gold ingots, and other heavy stuff. I needed to travel light. I couldn't believe this is what my parents considered to be an emergency fund. What kind of emergency fund would require millions of dollars to be stuck inside the mansion in currencies, gold, and jewels? In the dead of the night, I escaped my home. I never wanted to go back. So I bought a one-way ticket to the furthest place from our town I could get that very night. It wouldn't be enough, but then I could take another bus and another until I was on the other side of the country and far from those insane folks. Now, my plan didn't work. It was never meant to work because I forgot an important factor. My dad's private security guards. They didn't just stand around the mansion's grounds as I have previously believed. They had many other tasks assigned to them. And apparently, Dad wanted me back at once. It took them less than half a day to find me and drag me back home. My dad was furious. For a moment, I thought he truly did care and he was just worried about me. But I had no such luck. Do you know what he said to me? This would have ruined our family's reputation having a runaway daughter. Imagine what the neighbors will say, you ungrateful brat. I couldn't believe it. He wasn't worried about me and didn't even ask me why I had felt the need to escape their side. Instead, all he cared about was his reputation. Mom and Dad locked me up in my room without any TV or cell phones allowed. The maids brought dinner and then removed the tray. I was locked up in a very pretty cell. I was going mad out there, and when I looked out the balcony, I saw 2 guards waiting there. Apparently, I had my personal shadows now. When I was allowed back to school, these guys followed me constantly. They didn't walk inside the classroom, but they were still waiting just outside the door in the hallway. If my life was hellish before, now it was a living nightmare. I told myself that in 5 more months, it would all be over. The second I turned 18, I'd leave for good. So I waited, and waited, and waited. On my 18th birthday, Dad asked to talk to me. I met him in his massive study. He offered me a ridiculously massive amount of money if I stayed home for 1 more year, and to fully pay my tuition once I went off to college. If I promised to talk nicely about them to others, and come back home for dinner every Friday. He wanted to keep up appearances of the close-knit family. Well, screw that. No, Dad, I will make my own way in life, I replied, and he looked shocked. I don't want your money. And with that, I left. The guards couldn't stop me that time. I've never felt freer. I'll admit that I did have to struggle to get a job and earn a scholarship, but it was all worth it. I've never been happier, and I haven't spoken to my family in 3 whole years. It really feels like heaven. Thank you for watching. What's the worst thing your family has ever done to you? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and check out other videos on the channel. Before I was born, my dad named me Eva, which means life. See, my mother died in childbirth, and although I was born prematurely, I survived. Since then, my heartbroken father took excellent care of me. The bond we shared was unlike any other. He taught me how to speak, walk, read, ride a bicycle, almost everything. He'd dress up in princess costumes when I decided we should have tea parties with my dolls and teddy bears, and he'd always read me a new story before bedtime. He was the perfect dad, so I didn't really find myself feeling depressed because I didn't have a mother figure in my life. He played both roles really well. Before I continue, please don't forget to like my video and subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for being so awesome. I felt comfortable telling my dad anything. When I got older and started having crushes, I'd tell him everything too. He wasn't overprotective and never threatened to shoot any of the boys that I went out with. He'd just fill their heads with awful dad jokes. Maybe threatening them would have been better, honestly. I couldn't have asked for a better life. I lived in the perfect small neighborhood. Everyone there was kind, and my best friends all lived on the same street. My school was the best too. But I guess when everything seems to be going right, it's a warning that something is about to go wrong. And that is what happened to me. When I was 17, my dad told me that he had started dating again. Although I was worried, I wanted him to be happy, so I accepted and wished him the best. Sometimes he'd bring the women he was dating to meet me. Some of them were really nice, and they always tried to win my affection by buying me gifts or taking me shopping. But my dad never dated one woman for more than 3 months. It's like these women would appear, then disappear from my life. So I learned never to get too attached. I appreciated the free stuff, though. This is why nothing could have prepared me for what my father would tell me one night. Eva, I met the perfect woman. We're going to get married next month, he said. What? Was the only word I could manage to utter. I met her online. She lives in Montana. We are moving there next week to live with her and her family. Don't worry. She has a really big house, so you'll be comfortable, he said. I instantly burst into tears. Dad, we're in Michigan. Montana is miles away. I love my life here. I love my school, my friends, this house. How could you do this to me so suddenly? I said between tears. I know that this is going to be difficult at first, but maybe it will be even better over there. Also, you'll have a mother figure. Wouldn't that be great? As a man, there's only so much I can do for you. Plus, we can always come back to visit. We'll still have this house. I won't sell it, don't worry, he said. I tried to remain optimistic and to believe him. By the next week, we were all packed and ready to leave. As we got into the car to drive to the airport, my heart broke. Mostly because we had to leave my kitten Georgie behind. My best friend promised to take care of him, but I was still very sad. We couldn't take him because my dad said that Lily didn't like cats. When we got to Montana, we met my future stepmom at the airport. She was holding up a sign which said, "Welcome, Philip and Eva." My dad gave her a hug, and she looked at me and said, "Wow, Eva, you're so beautiful. I've heard so much about you. It's nice to meet you." She didn't seem bad at all, and she was really beautiful too. We drove to my new home, which was actually pretty huge. I was taken up to my room, which was decorated exactly how I liked it. I had a lot of cool new stuff in there as well, even a new prayer book with a huge monitor. My eyes twinkled. After I unpacked, Lily called me downstairs to meet my new siblings. She had 4 children. Arthur and James were 6 and 7. Then there was Maria, who was the same age as me. Finally, there was Janet, who was 19. She planned to move away for college soon. We had an interesting evening getting to know each other. 1 week later, the wedding ceremony was held at a local church. Although I felt this was happening all too quickly, my dad looked happy, so I tried to be happy for him. We all went back home together as one big, happy family. I now officially had a step-family. The first few months, Lily was exceptionally nice to me. She paid more attention to me than she paid to her own children. She would sometimes bring me breakfast in bed, take me to the spa or to the nail salon to get my nails done. We'd go shopping or bake cookies together, and we were always laughing at some silly random jokes. I felt like I had a real mother, as she was so kind and nurturing. My new siblings were also adorable. They were always laughing and smiling, and they made me feel right at home. Everything was perfect. My dad and I still had a wonderful relationship. I told him about everything that happened at my new school, and we still hung out a lot. But one day, he referred to me as the most beautiful girl in the whole world, and I could have sworn that I saw Lily look very angry. After he made that comment, I noticed her attitude towards me changed. We stopped going out together, and she was always too busy to do anything fun. When I tried to talk to her, she'd just give me one-word answers like, "Okay, and cool." Then she'd look away and pretend to be doing something else. I realized there was a big problem when I overheard her talking to my dad in their room one night. "You called Eva the most beautiful girl in the world. Don't you think I'm beautiful too?" she asked. "Of course you are, but a daughter will always be number 1 in her father's eyes. Don't you feel the same way about your sons?" he asked. "Ugh, I can't believe you. A wife is supposed to be a man's first priority," she said, and then they both went silent. The next day, she did something awful. She was mopping the floor and forgot that she left a puddle just underneath the stairs. When my father came down the stairs, he tripped and fell. His ankle was so badly damaged that we had to take him to the hospital. "This is all because Eva emptied a bottle of water at the bottom of the stairs," my stepmom said to my dad in front of me. "What? You left the puddle while you were mopping. Do you really think I'd intentionally try to hurt my dad?" I screamed. "See? She's doing things and blaming me now. Your daughter's really getting out of hand," Lily said. "Eva, don't disrespect your stepmother like that. She's very nice to you," my dad replied. "But Dad!" I tried to explain that she was framing me, but he wouldn't listen. When we got back home, my room was in a total mess. My clothes were on the floor, my stationery was on my light pink carpet, and there were stains everywhere because the markers were open. My lamp was broken, there were no sheets on my bed, and my mattress was ripped. I wanted to cry. "Dad, look what someone did to my room," I said. He came to my room slowly as he couldn't walk very well from the fall. "What happened here?" he asked. I don't know, I said. Suddenly, my stepmom appeared behind him and said, Would you look at that? Now she's lost her mind and trashed her own room. I spent a lot of time, money, and effort making this room nice for you, and this is what you've done? She screamed. What the hell are you talking about? Dad, she's lying. You know I'd never do this. I cried. Eva, apologize to your stepmother, my dad said while sighing and leaving the room. While his head was turned, my stepmother grinned at me with the most evil look I had ever seen. I had to clean up everything on my own, and it was hard to do that while crying. Why had she become so evil all of a sudden? Later, I found out that she paid my little stepbrothers to trash the room. Lily continued doing awful things and blaming me so that Dad would see me differently. She even turned her own children against me. No one would talk to me, and when my dad talked to me, he always seemed disappointed. One day, I decided that I couldn't take it anymore. I got the idea to set up hidden cameras in the house so that I could prove to my dad that his new, awful wife was the one causing all the trouble. I put one in every room in the house, including mine. That same night, my dad complained that his laptop stopped working. It was pretty important because he needed it for work. I went to my room and checked the surveillance footage and saw a video of my stepmother throwing the laptop on the floor. I saved this video but decided not to show it to my dad until I had more evidence. Within the next week, I had footage of her staining the furniture, burning the food, putting laxatives in his ice cream, pouring a sticky substance all over his favorite sneakers, and breaking several things in the kitchen. Of course, she blamed me for all these things, and when she spoke negatively in front of my father about me, I just smiled and said, sorry. She probably began to wonder what was going on with me. After I had gathered enough evidence, I typed and printed beautiful invitations, inviting the whole family to a family meeting. Everyone was seated nicely in the living room. I got my laptop and projector and pointed it towards a white wall. What you guys are about to witness may come as a surprise. Kids, your mom is a monster. Dad, what have you married? You've made a mistake, and the sooner we can get out of here, the better. Quite frankly, I am tired of being blamed for things I haven't done. Lily, why do you dislike me? Is it because I'm prettier than you and more important to my dad than you'll ever be? I said. I played the first video of Lily smashing my dad's laptop. No one really looked surprised. They just looked serious. I played the rest of the videos. Lily's daughters walked out disgusted, but the boys remained because they were already used to doing their mother's dirty work. At the end of it all, I said, Dad, do you believe me now? I've done none of the things she's accused me of. She has made my life a living hell. Can we please go home? I miss my life, I said. My father stared at me. I thought he was going to apologize, but instead he said, Eva, you violated your stepmother's privacy. Apologize immediately. My jaw dropped to the ground. Was he out of his mind? I've told you she's no good. It's about time we sent her off to boarding school. I know a good one in Switzerland. We can send her there and we won't have to worry about her doing horrible things anymore. Lily said, Yes, dear, that's a really good idea. My dad said, Did you not understand a thing I just showed you? I screamed. There she goes, screaming again. The girl is out of control, Lily said. The next week, I was all packed and sent off to Switzerland. I am there now, and school isn't as bad as being around that horrible woman, but I really miss how perfect my life was before my dad married her. I often wonder what happened to my dad, and why he never took my side when I was all he had for 17 years. There are some things we may never understand in life, I guess.
I never knew my dad. He left my mom and I when I was just a baby. That would have been okay if it wasn't for the fact that my mom was a psycho. But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you do, your parents will finally stop being so annoying. Trust me, it really works. It was always just me and my mom. We spent all our time together. She said we didn't need anyone else. When I was young, I loved it. I thought I had the best mom in the world. But as I grew older, I wanted to spend time with my friends. I wanted to go to the movies and sleep over at friends' houses, but Mom never let me. She was actually really mean to me. One time, she said I could invite some of my mates over to the house. We could play soccer in the garden and they could stay for dinner. I couldn't believe it. Mom said she would get pizza. I was so excited. All the boys came over and we had a fun afternoon in the garden. I told them all to come into the house to eat. We were sitting in the lounge when suddenly the door burst open and Mom came in screaming. "What are you all doing here? Get out! Get out!" What was wrong with her? Why was she embarrassing me in front of my friends? My friends just looked at me and didn't know what to do. I'm sorry," I said. "I think you'd better go." Mom always threw them out of the house. "And don't come back," she shouted after them. "Why are you so horrible?" I shouted at my mom. "I hate you." Mom would never buy me any trendy clothes. She always bought me the cheap clothes from last year's sales. The other kids at school would laugh at the way I dressed. I decided I was going to save all my pocket money and buy myself some new clothes. I eventually got enough money saved and went into town shopping. I was so happy to show Mom my new clothes. She just scowled when she saw them. "What a waste of money," she said. But I didn't care. She wasn't going to spoil it for me. I laid out my new clothes on the bed and went to take a shower. When I came out of the shower, I couldn't believe my eyes. My new clothes were on my bed, all cut into little pieces. I looked out of the door and saw my mom standing there laughing. "That will teach you to waste your money on new clothes," she said, laughing. Why would she do that? Why did she want to make my life so miserable? Did she blame me for Dad leaving her? I used to dream that I had a different mom, one that was nice to me and all of my friends. I wished that I would wake up one day and a new mom would be living with me. I never expected that that day would come true. I was late home from school that afternoon. I had been kept behind for messing around in the science class. I ran home because I knew that Mom would be angry with me for being late. I ran into the kitchen and looked around for Mom. She must be upstairs, I thought. "Mom, I'm home," I shouted. But there was no answer. That was when I saw the note. It said, "Oliver," on the front of the envelope, so I knew it was for me. I opened the envelope and read the note inside. "Dear Oliver, I'm sorry. I can't live here anymore. Don't try to find me. Love, Mom." What? Surely this was a joke. I ran upstairs to Mom's room. Her wardrobe was empty. Oh my God, it was true. I had finally got my wish. Mom had left me. I was so happy. I ran downstairs and into the kitchen. I was just about to get myself something to eat when I heard a knock on the door. My heart dropped. Surely this wasn't Mom coming back. I went to open the door, fully expecting to see my mom standing there. But it was a man. He looked at me and smiled. "Oliver?" he asked. "Yes," I answered. "I'm your dad." I just stood there in shock. I didn't know what to say. "I've been looking for you for 15 years, he said. "You are going to come to live with me and my wife." He told me to pack my things together, and pretty soon we set off in his car to his house. When we arrived at his house, a lady opened the door. She looked at me, smiling. "This is your stepmom, Alice," said Dad. "And this is your sister, Jess, and your brother, Lucas." I looked at them all. They seemed so happy to see me. I couldn't believe my luck. Finally, I was going to have a loving mom and a brother and a sister, too. "Show Oliver to his room," said Alice. I followed Jess and Lucas up the stairs. They told me all about the new school I was going to go to. They were younger than me, but we would be at the same school. "Unpack your things and then come down for dinner," said Jess. She grinned at Lucas and he laughed back. I wonder what that was about. I took my time getting all my things ready in my room. When I eventually went down to dinner, they were all sitting at the table waiting for me. Dad didn't look very happy. "Come on, Oliver," he said. "We've been waiting for you and dinner's getting cold." I looked at Jess, but she just looked at Lucas and giggled. I didn't want to get off to a bad start, so I just said sorry and sat at the table. Maybe Jess had just got confused. The rest of the weekend went well. We all had so much fun. I forgot all about what had happened when I arrived. The first day at my new school was amazing. Jess and Lucas had lots of friends, and they were all super nice to me. The kids in my class were really nice too. At lunchtime, I headed to the school cafeteria. As I grabbed my lunch, I looked around for a place to sit. I noticed an empty chair and went over. "Hi, I'm Oliver," I said to the pretty girl sitting in the other seat. "Hi, Oliver," she said. "I'm Emily." Emily and I were soon chatting away. I couldn't believe how much we had in common. She liked the same TV shows as me, and we both loved playing video games. We even both laughed at the same silly jokes. "Let's meet for lunch again tomorrow," said Emily. "Sure," I replied. After that, Emily and I pretty much spent all our time at school together. Emily and I were perfect friends. The only strange thing was that Emily would never come to my house. I invited her over so many times, but she always made an excuse. She said she wasn't good at meeting other parents. I didn't mind though. Being with Emily at school was perfect. But being at home wasn't quite how I had thought it was going to be. I didn't know when it really started, but Alice started treating me differently. When Dad was home, everything was fine. But as soon as he left for work, Alice would change. "Go up to your room, Oliver," she would say. "You're in my way." I didn't want to make Alice angry, so I would just do as she said. One Saturday morning, we were all sitting having breakfast when Dad said, "I'm playing golf today, Alice. Why don't you take the kids to the movies?" My eyes lit up as Dad handed over a bundle of cash to Alice. "Go for a burger, too," he said. I loved going to the movies. Dad left and I ran upstairs to my room to get changed. A few minutes later, I heard Alice coming up the stairs. "What do you think you're doing, Oliver?" she asked. "I'm coming to the movies with you," I replied. "Oh, no, you're not," said Alice. "Look at the state of your room. You are going to stay at home and clean up." I looked at my room. It was really clean and tidy. I didn't know what Alice meant. I felt like crying, but I wasn't going to let Jess and Lucas think I was a baby. I watched out of my bedroom window as the three of them drove off in Alice's car. I decided I might as well do my homework. It took me a couple of hours, but I finally finished it. What to do now, I thought. I know, I'll explore the house. I hadn't really seen all of the house. I decided I would head to Dad's office first. I wanted to find out more about him. I opened the door and looked in. Dad had a big wooden desk with a computer on it. It looked very important. I went over and sat in his chair. I wondered what it would be like to be the boss of a big office like my dad. On the side of the desk was a tray with folders. I looked at the top one. The title on the front was 15-year contract. I was just about to pick it up to read it when suddenly the door burst open and in walked Dad. "Put that down!" shouted Dad at the top of his voice. I jumped. I looked at him. His face was so red and angry. I hadn't meant any harm. "I'm sorry, Dad," I said. "I didn't mean to do anything wrong." "Just go to your room, Oliver," said Dad. I ran upstairs. Why was everything going wrong? First Alice, now Dad was angry with me too. Monday morning came and I couldn't wait for lunchtime to see Emily. "What's up with you?" asked Emily as I sat down next to her. I told her all about my miserable weekend. "I just don't know what I've done wrong," I said. "I'm nice to Jess and Lucas. I always help Alice in the kitchen. Even Dad is angry with me now." "I know what you should do," said Emily. "You should run away." I looked at her doubtfully. I wasn't sure that was the answer. "Don't worry, leave it to me," said Emily. That evening, Emily sent me a text. She told me that she had explained it all to her mom. Her mom said that I shouldn't run away, but I was welcome to come and stay at their house for a night or two. I thought that was the best thing. Emily told me to pack a bag with a few clothes and meet her at the bus station the following morning instead of going to school. The next morning, I said goodbye to Dad and Alice and walked to the bus station. Emily was waiting for me when I got there. "Hurry up," she said. "Our bus has just pulled in." We jumped on the bus and paid the driver our money. I felt like I was going on an adventure. Emily was smiling at me. "This is going to be so much fun," she said. The bus trundled off down the road. Emily and I chatted and laughed, and it wasn't long before she said, "Next stop is ours." We got off the bus and started walking down the road. "Is it far to your house?" I asked her. "No, only 5 minutes," she said. She seemed a bit nervous. I suppose it's because I was going to meet her mom for the first time. We went round the corner and she stopped. "This is it," she said. "Are you ready?" We walked up the driveway towards the front door. As we approached, the door opened and I looked to see who was coming. "Mom?" I shouted. "What are you doing here?" "Waiting for you," she said. I looked at Emily. "What's going on, Emily?" I asked. "This is my mom. Why is she in your house?" "It's okay, come in," she said. "We will explain it all." I was speechless, but I followed Emily in. "It's okay, Mom, I'll tell Oliver," she said. Why was Emily calling my mom, Mom? "I'm your sister," said Emily. I looked at her confused. Then Mom went on to explain everything. "When your dad left me, he made me sign a contract. I could live with you for 15 years, but then you would go to live with him, and I could never see you again. That's why I was so mean to you. I thought if you hated me, you wouldn't be sad when I left. Emily has been living with your dad. Now it's her turn to live with me." This was madness. I looked at Emily. Was it really true? "I've missed you so much," said Mom. "I've missed you too," I said. "I want to live with you and Emily." "It's impossible," said Mom. "Your dad has the contract. He can take me to court." That's when I remembered the folder I had seen in Dad's office. "Come on, Emily, I know what we can do," I said. I grabbed Emily by the hand and we raced to catch the bus back to Dad's house. When we got there, I ran straight to Dad's office. Dad was sitting at his desk. He looked up in surprise. "Oliver, Emily," he gasped. "What are you doing?" I picked up the folder on Dad's desk and said, "I've come for this." Dad tried to grab it out of my hands, but Emily got there before him. She threw the contract into the open fire. Dad and Emily and I watched as it went up in flames. Dad's face fell. "I'm sorry, Dad. We are going to live with Mom," I said. It has now been a year since that dramatic day. We still see Dad every now and again. I like living with Mom, especially now that she doesn't have to be so psycho.
I would say that I was your pretty average teenager. I didn't do anything weird or crazy or even adventurous. I went to school, I came home, I joined a few clubs, I did my homework, I kissed a few boys. That was all. There was nothing about me that was more or less special than any other teenager in the country. There was nothing about me that stood out or was worth writing down, beside whatever social media gossip was happening at the moment. I wasn't under some delusion that I was particularly awesome, and my parents didn't tell me that I was special. They didn't demand my teachers give me special treatment or scream at them when they didn't see my full potential or something.
But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you do, your crush will ask you out within a week. Trust me, it really works.
So imagine my shock and surprise when one day, while looking for lipstick in my mom's room, I found a journal with my name on it, and inside was the stuff nightmares were made of. Let me back up a bit. I always knew that my mother kept a journal of her own, and I didn't really think there was anything weird about it. She wrote quite a few notes on napkins and on the back of envelopes, and always said that she was going to put them in her journal later. I didn't think that was weird, considering that I grew up with her doing it. The only thing that I thought was weird was that I never saw her journal, but I assumed it was in her bedroom somewhere. When I found a notebook with my name on it, I assumed that maybe it was a present for me or something. I picked it up, and I was surprised to find out it was littered with hundreds of notes that my mom had torn out of napkins and journals. Curious, I opened it. Why would she have a journal with my name on it? "Oh," I said out loud as I flipped through it, "because it's about me." There wasn't just one thing in it, or two things, or three things. The entire journal was about me. And before you tell me that it was normal for parents to write about your kids, consider that every move I had ever made in my 16 years of existence seemed to be in there. Okay, not every move. This particular journal started last year, which led me to believe that there were a lot more of them. Stella poured her milk first instead of her cereal. Started doing this on 5/11, 54 days since she poured cereal instead of milk. Stella is wearing black tank top and blue jeans. She has her blue earrings on. Why would she write all of this down? Why did it matter? I sat on my mother's dressing room stool for quite a while, trying to make sense of all the entries. I knew my mother would be coming home from work soon, so I didn't want to get caught, but I couldn't tear myself away. There was nothing about her in the journal. She didn't write down her emotions or feelings, or even what the rest of the family did that day. All she did was write about me, and that scared the crap out of me. I suppose some kids would have felt special or loved, but I just felt like my blood was ice. Did she write everything? Was she using it as cannon fodder for my wedding day? I heard my mother come home eventually, and I ran from her room and into mine. When I slammed the door, I felt like I had just run a marathon. "Hey," I texted my best friend casually. "Would you be freaked out if someone wrote down your every move?" I actually deleted and rewrote that text several times before I sent it, because I didn't know what I really wanted to say. In the end, I left it exactly as is. "Sure," Sally texted back. "I'd call the cops." "Why? Are you reading a weird book again?" I tended to read a lot because I didn't like facing the real world. "Totally," I said, like it was a work of fiction. I wish this was just a weird book. I guess it was, but my mother was writing it. One of my strategies for getting through life was just to pretend that everything was fine. I could literally go into school with a face full of mud and act like I was wearing a full face of makeup. My memory wasn't the best, so I started to wonder whether everything in that notebook was real. Maybe my mother was just writing a really complicated fiction story. I decided that I was going to test it out. I started to keep track of my own movements to see if they matched what she wrote down. For a week, I did something different every day. Some days, I ate apples, and other days, I ate bananas. I kept track of what days I wore a white top and what days I wore a blue one. However, to my dismay, whenever I was able to sneak into my mother's room and read the journal, she had written all of it down. I had no idea what to do. I mean, she was my own mother. She was supposed to know what I did. But didn't this seem too far? Because it seemed like all my friends had some kind of weird quirks with their family. That, or they had blended families that had all sorts of weird schedules and traditions. I felt like my family was the only one that did the whole 2-3 kids thing in the suburbs with a white picket fence. We were normal, or so I thought. It was around this time I started to notice some other odd things. I was going shopping with my friends' mothers a lot for prom season, and I noticed how much they all looked like their mothers. They all had the same eyes or the same hair or same coloring. I was fair with dark hair, and both my parents had blue eyes and blonde hair. My parents were also short, and I was tall. That wasn't that weird, right? Recessive genes and all, that's a thing, right? I desperately wanted it to be. I'd actually read into it in science class more than once, but each time it confused me, and so I let it be. It was probably that I was in denial, which is what I was famous for among my friends. The final straw came when a friend of mine sent me a link on Instagram. I clicked on it out of curiosity, and I saw that she had sent me to an account that had a whole bunch of professional-looking headshots on it. "Someone is stealing your mother's picture," she said. Sure enough, under the Instagram account's profile, there was a picture of my mother with the title Chief Child Psychologist. Except my mother wasn't a psychologist. She was a housewife, and the name they used wasn't even her real name. "Thanks," I said. "I'll report this as fraud." This happened all the time, right? Until Instagram got back to me and said it wasn't fraud. "We have verified the image with the name as described and title based on other image searches and data searches with that name and title. Please see these links as proof of our verification. If you have any other questions, please do not hesitate to contact us." I was so confused as I clicked on their links. Images of my mother popped up with a graduate degree in child psychology and a lot of accreditation under her name. How could this be real? This must be very elaborate fraud. At least, I thought it was very elaborate fraud. I was living in denial, just like when I knew my pet hamster didn't run away and join the circus. I sat in front of my computer for a long time and tried to figure out exactly what to do. Eventually, I decided I just needed to confront her. I'm sure there was a reason, and I'm sure she could explain. After all, she was my mother. She could explain everything, or so I thought. I met her on the stairs, and she had an odd smile on her face. "Hello, Mom," I said. "Hello, Tina," she said. "What are you up to?" "Just looking up your superhero identity," I said. "Are you Clark Kent right now?" "What?" she asked, and I took a deep breath. "Actually, I know what you were doing," she said, and I froze. "You do?" "Of course she does, dummy," I thought. "She's spying on you. I knew you would find out the truth eventually." "You what?" I felt my blood run cold. "Wait, this is real?" She laughed, and I didn't know what to do. Was she joking? Did I laugh with her? "Are you really a psychologist?" "Of course," she said. "What, you thought I was always studying and writing things down for the fun of it?" "I didn't know what you were doing," I answered at last. "But, why didn't you tell me?" "You're my mother. Aren't you supposed to be honest with me?" "Honest with you?" she asked me. "Because I'm your mother." "That's what I said." I was starting to wonder if I lived in an alternate universe. "I'm not your mother," she said, "but I guess that I did a good job convincing you. You're too smart, Tina. I was hoping to explain this to you in another year or so, when you were 18, but 16 is old enough." "For what?" I asked. "You're my thesis," she said, "for my second PhD on child psychology. It's groundbreaking." "I'm what?" "Haven't you ever noticed how we don't look alike?" She shook her head with a chuckle. "Mom, are you serious?" I felt like I was going to faint. "But how long have you been writing this paper? Where are my real parents?" "Oh, I don't know," she said with a shrug. "They plastered your face on a milk carton once, but they've given up, I think. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Why doesn't it matter? I asked, my voice shaking. Because I still have another year of funding to write this, she said, looking me right in the eye. Now, don't you have homework to do? Does Dad know? Of course he knows, she replied. We are married, aren't we? Are you? I asked. I didn't know what was real and what was not anymore. Yes, she said. He's also my thesis supervisor. Oh, I said, like it was normal. Is Terry my real brother? Oh my God, Tina, do you think I invented a whole family? How much funding do you think the psychology world gets? I'll have you know it's not a lot. Now, homework, before I get another call from your teachers. Go. This was a moment that could change my life. I could run, screaming, and try to figure all of this out. I could call the police. I could run out the front door. But what would you do if you were given the chance to stay in the only place you had ever known, or leave it, when you knew leaving would mess up your whole life and stress you out just before final exams? Would you really run? Would you leave everything that made you feel safe and warm just so you could create a bunch of trouble for yourself? Yes, Mother, I said, and turned around. Denial wasn't just a river in Egypt. I bet my mother would have a field day writing about this.